Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most beloved horror franchises of the last decade. The first game sees you starting a job as a night guard for a Chuck E. Cheese style restaurant, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, home to Freddy Fazbear and Friends, a group of animatronics with a limited amount of autonomy at night. Unaware of who you are and thinking you're a suitless animatronic skeleton, they want nothing more than to shove your lifeless body into one of the spare costumes. By using security cameras and hall lights, you have to survive 5 nights in the establishment, only to end up making a measly $4 an hour by the end of it. This game was an instant success and spawned a cult following, who theorized there was more behind the story. This led to the creator, Scott Cawthon, to put out more games, feeding into the fan theories about further lore. And before you knew it, a completely standalone horror game became a cryptic tale about the serial murder of children so a man could try to unlock the secrets of the soul and become immortal, which itself led to his death and eventual resurrection inside a wearable animatronic suit. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy my style of videos, and do the little hype thing if possible. Now, I'm not the best at horror games, mainly because any game can be considered horror to me with how often I get jump scared. Oh my god, it's him! Ah! This doesn't mean I don't play them though. I've been working my way through a number of horror games, including the FNAF series, to prep myself for this video. It did not go very well.
Jojo's not using it as sparingly as possible.
Oh, you suck my...
When and where?
Oh no, bro. Fuck! I even tried to cancel out the jump scares by putting ASMR in the background, to absolutely no avail. Oh my fuck ass dick! In 2015, Warner Brothers announced they'd acquired the rights to make a film based on the events of the first game, but the movie ended up in development hell, and Scott announced in 2017 the new company working on the film would be Blumhouse Productions, a very polarizing studio in the horror genre. They're the people responsible for everything from Insidious and Split to Happy Death Day and Truth or Dare. Blumhouse's strategy is often very quantity heavy, sometimes putting out as many as 14 movies a year. The budget and quality of these films vary dramatically, but almost never correspond to a movie's success, such as Paranormal Activity spending less than $250,000 while grossing almost $200 million, or Amityville: The Awakening making less than $1,000 its opening weekend. I can very clearly see why.
It's what God would want.
Now, to help you understand where we were at when the movie was first discussed, Warner Brothers' original announcement was in April of 2015. That was a month after FNAF 3 came out, which I hated, by the way. Get the fuck out of my face, you goddamn puppet. And the announcement was 3 months before the release of FNAF 4, which is my friend Calls Me Becky's favorite game, and probably my least favorite of the original games. Because oh my god, what do you mean I actually have to use my ears to not die? I was already playing these games wincing at half volume, trying not to have a heart attack. This is horrendous. I fucking hate this. Oh my fuck! God! Jesus. There have been 11 games released, including 5 mainline titles, since the development of the movie started. In an interview, Scott explained the delays were related to the screenplay, which took years to get to a point he was happy with. His biggest concern was the animatronics needing to be handled with much more nuance than a standard horror film. They aren't inherently evil, they're the spirits of innocent children, so any sort of violence on their part needed to be handled with care. After the script got to a point Scott liked, production on the movie was smooth. And in 2023, we got Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie, Blumhouse's most successful film to date, grossing almost $300 million. Scott had already said if the first film were successful, a sequel would be made based on the events of the second game, which is set to release in December of this year. So to prepare for that movie, I decided to take this October to make a breakdown or review of the first film, criticizing what I can, pointing out any editing tricks or flaws I noticed, and explaining the tie-ins to the video games and its characters. There are a few things we need to note before starting. The lore of the video games is still not 100% understood, and there are many theories out there that contradict each other. Part of the reason it's not very clear is definitely because the story was originally retconned into existence, and people have tried to use a lot of ramen noodles to fill in the gaps. I'm doing my best here, but if I get something wrong, or if you have a different theory about the lore than what I bring up, let me hear it in the comments. The other thing to note is that the movie is a completely separate canon to the the games or the books, and does not have any effect on them whatsoever. Think of the characters and lore as puzzle pieces that build up the story. The movie isn't adding to this puzzle, it's instead taking pieces from it and creating its own picture in a completely different way. We're gonna first go through the entire movie, mainly focusing on the narrative and any of the video game tie-ins, and then at the end of the video, we're gonna spend some time going over the themes that the movie is presenting, trying to garner deeper meaning from everything that's going on, including stuff like guilt, corruption of innocence, the cycle of trauma, and redemption. I'll have the video timestamped in the description, so if you want to skip around at all, feel free to. But remember, if you enjoy, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you want more videos like this. And with that, let's get into reviewing Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie. We start the movie by cutting to a man frantically unscrewing a vent cover before a bang is heard at a barricaded door behind him. He finally unscrews the vent and fearfully makes his way through, coming out into a storage room. If he had to unscrew the vent to get in, why was he able to just knock the other side of the vent down? Stepping out of the storage room, he hears party music and sees lights cycling down a hallway. He quickly takes a left, and we see a haunting silhouette of someone following him. As the man runs, the lights begin cutting out before he hits a locked door. We then hear a song that every FNAF fan is familiar with. This is Foxy's pirate song from FNAF 1. It had a 1 in 30 chance of playing whenever he was fully inside of his pirate cove. In the first game, Foxy was the fastest animatronic, literally booking it down the hall if you didn't give him the attention he needed. So it's apt that he happens to be the one chasing this man down a hallway, before we cut to him being thrown in a chair and restrained. An animatronic mask with blades on the inside spins up as he tries to escape, and we cut away to elsewhere in the building, aware from his screams that he definitely didn't make it. This man is Bob. He's the now former security guard of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and in the games, his name is Ralph, otherwise known as Phone Guy.
I wanted to record a message for you to help you get settled in on your first night. I actually worked in that office before you. I'm finishing up my last week now, as a matter of fact, but I'm here to tell you there's nothing to worry about. You'll do fine.
He left a handful of recordings for the security guards after him, and was killed off sometime before the protagonists of the first game took the job. Originally, it was theorized he was the serial killer known as Purple Guy, but as the games came out, it slowly became clear that Phone Guy and Purple Guy were two separate people, and Scott made sure to subtly cement this by giving Purple Guy's character a British accent in later games.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream.
Another fun fact is that YouTuber Markiplier was meant to play the character of Bob.
Why, the Ku Klux Klan!
But scheduling issues unfortunately prevented this. The character is never named in the film, and only when the novelization was released was his name revealed to be Bob, and people assume him and Ralph are the same character. As Bob screams his face off, the camera pans to a wall of drawings. At the center, an image of a yellow rabbit holding hands with 5 kids. We then get an opening credits sequence stylized as an arcade cabinet, explaining the necessary backstory for the haunting of the restaurant. A purple guy in a yellow rabbit suit, known as the Golden Bonnie suit in the games, lures 5 children away, murdering each. We only see the deaths implied before the title card rolls. This arcade cabinet style is a reference to the minigames that started in FNAF 2, that either occurred after you died or after successfully completing a night. These minigames are what gave most the speculation for the early lore of the series, and it's nice to see them throw in a little nod to that in the movie. Next thing we know, it's 6 AM and our protagonist, played by Josh Hutcherson, has just woken up. We're not aware of his character's name by this point, and we'll get to that a bit later, but Hutcherson is most known for playing Peeta Mellark in the Hunger Games series, which is all I could think about when I first watched the movie. I also wasn't aware till making this video the number of movies this guy was in that I watched as a kid. He was in Zathura, Bridge to Terabithia, Journey to the Center of the Earth. He had quite the child acting career, but to me, he'll forever be the baker's son who got one-tapped by a wall. A few subtle things happen in this scene of him waking up. First, he hits the rewind button on a cassette player before putting a bottle of pills into his nightstand, and the camera pans up to a poster of Nebraska on the ceiling. He then walks into his little sister Abby's room, finding her in a pillow fort instead of her own bed. Her room is covered in drawings, and there's obviously tension between these two siblings. Abby reluctant to listen to her older brother, who's trying to hurry himself to work. Hi, this is editing Jojo. He's putting on a dress shirt and a tie, neither of which he's wearing in the next scene. We then cut to our main character talking to a co-worker about the book he had on his nightstand, titled Dream Theory. This book explains the theory of being able to relive memories as an active participant to interact with the events that took place. Our protagonist then goes to order an ice cream, and we see he's a security guard at the mall, before the cashier reveals his name is Mike Schmidt to be exact, the same name as the protagonist of FNAF 1, seen only on the pay stub after completing at least the first 5 nights of the game. Another Easter egg thrown in here is Chica's Magic Rainbow being the mascot of this ice cream shop. She's the hidden final boss of the spin-off game FNAF World. While Mike is waiting for his ice cream, he notices a child standing alone in the main corridor of the mall, before a man comes up and aggressively grabs him. This immediately sets Mike off, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't blame him for being suspicious of this man. That kid is actively fighting back against him, and as mall security, it'd definitely be completely reasonable to stop them and ask a few questions. So to be frank, that might have been a little bit of an overreaction. They also have that overused crowd gasping sound effect when he knocks the guy into the pool. I just find that a little funny. Mike is promptly fired from his job and later goes to see his career counselor, a man named Steve Raglan, played by none other than Matthew Lillard, who I know as Shaggy Rogers in the live-action Scooby-Doo movies, as well as voicing him in most of the Scooby-Doo TV shows I watched as a kid. Steve goes over the incident at the mall, explaining that the man Mike beat up was actually the father of the child he saw, before going over Mike's spotty job record, only lasting 2 months at a tire shop and only a single week as a janitor before he got the mall security gig. He seems pretty dismissive of Mike until he sees his last name, which completely shifts his attitude. First, he reiterates that Mike's options are limited, before offering him another security gig, one he explains has a high turnover rate, bad pay, and terrible hours. Mike says he can't work nights, but Steve gives him his card anyways, in case he changes his mind. I see a lot of people praising the line delivery here, where he just pauses midway of saying Mike Schmidt, but honestly, it's a little cheesy and a bit too on the nose. I'm not gonna make fun of it any more than that though. Arriving home, we get the age-old cliche of a red letter telling us Mike is at risk of losing the house. We then meet Max, Abby's babysitter, who seems to have the perfect gig, watching more TV than kid. Mike finds Abby drawing a picture of him in her room, along with a handful of children who she says are her friends. He says she can finish drawing after eating dinner, but Abby refuses, and Mike ends up breaking her crayon. He pleads with her to just come eat something, but she ignores him, simply saying he's sitting on one of her friends. Mike gives up, telling her that kids that don't eat stay small forever, to which she replies that her imaginary friends think he is an idiot.
At least I'm real.
God damn. Later that night, Mike is getting ready for bed, taking some of the pills we saw earlier, presumably some sort of benzodiazepine to help him sleep. He then hits play on the tape recorder, which is revealed to be nature noises. He stares up at the Nebraska poster, which begins to move as he dozes off, dreaming of a childhood memory of a camping trip he went on with his family. Before we continue, I wanted to go over the editing of this poster sequence, where we go from a static image of the poster to the swaying trees. If we brighten up the moving trees, I'm almost certain it's CGI. But even if it's not, to achieve this shot, they would need to create the footage of the trees swaying first, then make a poster based off a single frame in that footage, and line the two up perfectly. It's super well done and stood out to me because of how much work something like that would take when they could have just skimped out on it and cut from the poster to his dream. This dream of Mike's turns out to be a memory from the day his younger brother, Garrett, was kidnapped, after he got distracted while watching him during during a family vacation. He remembers specific details of this day super vividly, such as some soda spilling over, but what he didn't see was the face of the person who took his brother. Using critical thinking skills and context clues, we can piece together that Mike is obsessively inducing the same dream every night in the hopes that dream theory is real and that eventually, one of these nights, he'll be able to no-clip into the car to see who the kidnapper was. This also explains why Mike overreacted when he saw a child being grabbed at the mall. He obviously has deep trauma after watching his brother be kidnapped right in front of him, but it's also hindering his ability to raise the sister he still has. The next morning, Mike is in a meeting at Abby's school, a child development center. It's never clearly stated in the movie itself that it's a development center, but the novelization of the movie clears up any confusion about it. We're introduced to Mike's estranged aunt, Jane, who is the worst actor of all time, but in this scene it almost feels like she's doing it on purpose, as Jane tries to convince Dr. Lillian, Abby's psychologist, that Mike isn't fit to raise his younger sister, in an effort to get the state to give her custody, and the monthly check that comes along with it. We're also introduced to my boy Big Doug. He's Jane's lawyer and is completely checked out the entire time he's listening to her pretend to cry about Mike's incident at the mall. The two give Mike custody papers, telling him he needs to sign or he'll be taken to court and lose any rights to see his sister. Mike is well aware that Jane doesn't actually care about his sister's well-being, calling Abby mentally ill for having imaginary friends, but also recognizes she'd probably still do a better job of raising her than he can, saying Abby talks to air more than him anyways. Dr. Lillian rebuts Mike by pointing out that images are one of the most important ways kids communicate and interact with the world around them before they learn to speak, and that he's at the center of most of his sister's drawings, which means she definitely cares about him. Keep this in mind because it's the super genius writing that helps bridge the gap between killer robots and innocent spirits later on in the movie. While Mike understands what the doctor is saying, he argues no judge would side with him in court, as he doesn't even have a job right now, and Dr. Lillian says that would probably be a good place to start. We then cut to Mike calling Steve about the job and get a sequence of him heading in for his first shift, while Steve explains the backstory of the place, an abandoned pizza restaurant from the 80s that the owner just doesn't have the heart to tear down. Mike's job is simple: keep burglars and vagrants out using the fully functioning, if not outdated, security system, and if the power is being wonky, flip the main breaker to fix it. Should be a breeze. Something to note is that this seems to be the movie's adaptation of Phone Guy. As I explained earlier, the phone guy in the game was an unnamed character we later learn is called Ralph, who was adapted as Bob. Steve is now Phone Guy, it would seem, or this call is at least a nod to the idea of Phone Guy, who a lot of people originally theorized was the killer. Mike begins settling into his new job, and we get a good look at this movie's adaptation of the security camera feed, which he can control with some sort of keyboard. There are way more camera angles than in the game, front entry, arcade machines, the stage, a change for the better. But the movie isn't going to focus much on camera gameplay because, let's be honest, it would be pretty boring if the entire movie was just him staring into screens for 30 hours. If you're into that sort of thing, check out my War of the Worlds review. That's basically what it is, and I smeared ketchup on my legs in public to prove the movie sucked. Sometime later, Mike notices that TV and VHS combo that made everyone excited at school and a tape with his name on it. Playing it, he finds a very cringy security guard training video, complete with a super stiff employee smiling like she has a gun pointed at her. The video explains that the founder of Fazbear Entertainment wanted to combine his two passions, family-friendly fun and cutting-edge animatronic technology. The creator of the franchise is never named in the movie, just like he's never named in the games, though dialogue is heard from him in FNAF 6, Pizzeria Simulator, specifically that clip that became one of the funniest memes I've ever had the pleasure of seeing.
Hey man, we should get out of here. The building's on fire.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth. If you still even remember that name.
The only place he is named is in the novels, as Henry Emily, and it's revealed that sometime before the books, he committed suicide by animatronic, which is obviously not how it went down in the games, since he's in the 6th one. Mike heads to the lockers. This is Balloon Boy. Fuck this guy. He's an animatronic from the 2nd game, a robot who hands out balloons to children during the day. He comes through your vents, and if he gets into your office, he steals your flashlight ability, pretty much dooming you to die by a foxy jump scare. Like the base protagonist Mike is, he turns the creepy Balloon Boy toy around, before grabbing a security vest. He starts taking a look around the restaurant, and hears something loudly fall behind the stage curtain. Cautiously approaching the animatronics, we get our first glance at most of the cast. fast. Later that night, Mike falls asleep while on the job. Not great for his first day, but it's not like anything's happening. He begins having his Nebraska vacation dream, but this time it's finally different. After his brother is taken, he turns around to see 5 kids standing behind him. Menacingly! Get out of there, SpongeBob! Mike tries to ask if they saw the man who took his brother, and instead of a response, they all book it in different directions. While chasing a blonde boy in a striped shirt, he trips and wakes up, having fallen on the floor. His watch alarm is beeping, meaning it's 6 a.m., and his shift is over. Like the first night of the game, nothing too strange really happened, though his dream finally being different has him looking very concerned. Arriving home later, Mike finds Max asleep on the couch, having watched Abby during his shift. She asks how it went, and he says it was interesting, before it's revealed Mike hasn't actually been able to pay Max for babysitting. She seems completely fine with this, and the subtle little looks we've seen from her implies that she might be doing it just because she has a crush on him. She even has a line earlier in the movie where she sees an ad for some ring and makes a comment about how she wished someone would get her a ring. But then we cut to Sparky's diner and learn the real reason she's doing it is because she's a plant by Aunt Jane to find dirt on Mike, to help her get Abby taken away. This is where we get a cameo from our boy Matt Pat of game theory fame. This closeted heterosexual is one of the main reasons the game became as popular as it did. His theory videos had an insane amount of views, and there's no shot he didn't directly influence the lore itself by popularizing certain perspectives. Big Doug looks extremely excited to see him, but Jane cock-blocks him out of actually buying any food. Matt tells him that lunch is the most important meal of the day, before he gets to say his iconic line on the big screen.
Thought it was breakfast.
Don't you tell me how many calories I need, bitch!
Max and her brother made a deal for $200 to look for evidence of criminal endangerment in Mike's house, and Jane isn't willing to pay them since they couldn't actually find anything. Big Doug realizes he shouldn't know about any of this since it's definitely highly unethical.
Why don't we just kill him?
I fucking love Doug, bro. Max tells Jane about the new job to look good on paper to a judge, and her brother suggests they break into the restaurant and trash it to get Mike fired. I stand by my earlier opinion that Aunt Jane is the worst actor in the entire movie. It was less notable in the scene where she was acting like someone who's poorly acting, but getting another scene with her, she comes off like someone you'd see in a Darman skit.
You better not mess up anything else and ruin my perfect Yelp score.
Connection terminated.
We cut back to Mike attempting to pull down his Nebraska poster before Abby interrupts him, wearing his security vest, saying she wants to go with him to work. He obviously says no before passing her off to Max. Later at the restaurant, Mike's hung the poster up in the office and brought his cassette to fall asleep to, planning to induce the same dream and try to communicate with the kids he saw. Though while he's sleeping, we're shown Foxy has left the Pirate Cove and is making his way down the hall. In his dream, Mike lives out the same moment before running into the kids again. He asks them to not run, saying he only wants to know if they saw anything. After getting no response, he yells at them in anger, and they all take off again. He catches one of them, who's wearing a pirate hook, before he gets slashed. Funny enough, they reuse the same moment, but from 2 slightly different camera angles. The first being more to the left, and the second being longer but closer to Mike's 12 o'clock. Why? No idea, but I noticed, and now you have to. Mike then looks up at the child, who screams while bleeding from his eyes, before he wakes up. The tears running down the boy's face were done with CGI, and while the 2 on the left eye look pretty good, the reflections on the right eye are a little lacking, and the base of the tear moves quite a bit if you pay attention, starting closer to his nose, but shifting further away as the frames pass by. All the monitors are left glitching out, as the intercom kicks on playing music. On a mirror, we briefly see the words "It's me" spelled out, before getting a split-second view of Foxy in the hallway, right before Mike flips the breaker off. Upon flipping it back on, everything is working fine, and the intercom rings as a police officer waits out front. Before we move on, "It's me" is a reference to an Easter egg in the first game, where occasionally your screen would glitch out with the words "It's me" mixed in with creepy images of the animatronic heads, and it's usually associated with a character known as Golden Freddy, who will talk about more detail later in the video. When Mike goes to open the door, we're introduced to Vanessa. Vanessa is a character in the later games, starting with Help Wanted, a VR title released in 2019. This was the beginning of what was known as the Steel Wool series, named after the studio that took over production of FNAF games, while Scott focused on story and direction instead. I've not played Help Wanted because despite it getting flat screen support, it just doesn't fucking work. Why can't I hit it? It won't let me go back. What? Fuck this, I'm going to get Wendy's. But Vanessa is the presumed player character of that game, a beta tester who gets corrupted by Glitch Trap, who's theorized to be the digital manifestation of Purple Guy, the killer from the original games. She's the main antagonist of the second Steel Wool game, Security Breach, which was an absolute fucking disaster thanks to COVID.
Freddy, you're supposed to be on lockdown.
Freddy, you're supposed to be on lockdown. Me.
Decentralized lockdown workflows were paired with Scott making the boneheaded decision to not explain the story of the game to the development team. This fuck up cannot be fixed, and the lore is forever screwed because of it. But the team tried to make it up with the free DLC called Ruin, released a few months before the movie came out. Any fan of the series would be immediately aware of who Vanessa was the moment she said her name, but they'd still be pretty shocked to see her at all, considering how late in the series she appears. And if the movie didn't go through development hell, she probably wouldn't have been in it at all. Vanessa points out that Mike is bleeding, and it appears the wound he sustained in his dream was an actual attack by Foxy in his sleep. Vanessa says she knows where they keep the first aid kit and lets herself in. While patching Mike up, she explains that she used to love Freddy's as a kid, and she likes to stay up to date on what's going on there since it's on her police route. She also introduces herself as Vanessa Shelley, a last name created for the movie. Initially, she seems pretty relaxed, before accusing Mike of being suspicious since the moment he opened the door, having bloodshot eyes, a fast heart rate, and a weird gash on his arm. Hutcherson is really good at looking like a complete dumbass, which is exactly how you'd probably react in the situation he's in. He says it's been a weird night, and Vanessa pauses before saying, "Yep, sounds like Freddy's." Bruh, why do you act so accusatory in the first place then? Vanessa says the restaurant gets to people, and that's why she knows Mike is going to quit soon, saying the security guards never last. She then asks Mike if he has met the animatronics yet, before taking him to the main dining room. Pause, that is Cyclone, dog shit game, and also it didn't exist in the 80s. That shit was invented in 2009. Unpause. Mike pushes Vanessa more on why she believes he's gonna quit, and she says it's the bad pay on top of the thing about the kids going missing. That's a tad bit vague. Vanessa then distracts Mike by hitting the Showtime button, and for the first time in the movie, we get to see all the animatronics in action. The robotics for the movie were created by Jim Henson's Creature Shop, the visual effects company created by Jim Henson, the man behind the Muppets. The movie had both animatronic and wearable suits made, so they could look like realistic robots when on stage, while also having the ability to film scenes that required more movement. I think they all look pretty solid, except for Foxy. The other animatronics' age is shown by how dirty they are, as in the game, but Foxy is physically much more worn down than the others. Now in terms of accuracy, this is pretty much exactly how he looks in the game. He's supposed to have torn spots in his fur from age, but it instead looks like someone purposely cut out holes in him. The holes in the arms even look symmetrical. Not the biggest deal though, overall everything looks fine on these guys. Vanessa is super into the show, and it's obvious this is her special interest. All while Hutcherson is still putting in the work with his dumbfounded expression. Give this man an Oscar. Vanessa jokingly asks Mike if he wants to dance before Bonnie strikes his guitar, which sparks violently, shorting out the entire performance and ending the show. With no more distractions, Mike brings up the missing kids again, and Vanessa chides him for not doing basic research into the pizza place. She doesn't go into much detail, only saying it's why the place closed down in the 80s. She then sidetracks once more, telling him he doesn't even have his badge yet. Vanessa brings him over to the prize counter and gives him an insanely heavy looking metal badge. Holy shit, for only 1,000 tickets, that'll get you a plastic frog and a kick in the teeth at today's arcades. The scene ends with a cut to morning. Mike locks up, having completed his second night, injured but not too bad off. Vanessa gives Mike the advice to not let Freddy's get to him before driving off. She's giving off mixed signals here. Are you sure he's not gonna last, or are you hoping he sticks around? Across the street, Max's brother spots Mike leaving, and after Max gives the signal that Mike is home, they all break into the building through what appears to be the loading dock. That right there is a secret dog that was cut from the movie. His name is Bonesy, and he's Max's dog, and a lot of her scenes and all of his scenes got cut. In the security office, the camera monitors mysteriously turn back on, letting us know the spirits are aware some shit is about to go down. The group of men discuss their plan: maximum damage, minimum time, steal anything that looks valuable, and meet up afterwards. We get a security camera angle that directly directly references the stage camera from the first game. As Bonnie opens his eyes, we then cut back to the men talking, and when we see the security footage again, Bonnie is gone. Super well done, and it should also be noted that Bonnie was usually the first animatronic to kick into action in the game. They begin smashing everything in sight, and it's with great joy that I report all of these pinball machines are of the correct era. One of these destruction clips I find funny is this really quick shot of one of them hitting these plastic capsules like it's a golf ball. My guy, this does not look like maximum damage to me. There's also a shot of an Employee of the Month board that includes a number of famous FNAF YouTubers. This guy right here is Daco, whose interview footage I've been using throughout the video. We cut to a goon in the kitchen named Carl. If you look closely, he's actually wearing a t-shirt which references Midnight Motorist, a mini game from FNAF 6 that pretty much stumped the entire FNAF community for a very long time. Carl hears noises from the industrial fridge. As he approaches it, we can physically see Chica making her way down the hall. He opens the fridge and finds the cupcake. This animatronic has existed since the first game, and apparently a lot of fans chose to call him Carl the Cupcake. For some reason, Scott didn't like this, so he specifically named this character Carl, and Scott's hatred for that name is about to be taken out on his face. He hears a noise behind him and turns around, only to turn back and see the cupcake is gone. He turns around again to find Chica and the cupcake both staring directly at him. Bam, cupcake jump scare. Slowing it down, the CGI here really isn't that bad. The scene could also be referencing the fact that Chica is known in the first game to make her way through the kitchen. Though the camera in that area is dead, an audio of her knocking around pots and pans lets you know she's there. At the prize counter, another goon known as Hank overhears Carl screaming, and when he looks through into the kitchen, he sees his fellow gooner being munched on by the cupcake, as Chica glares at him. We then cut to Jeff, who's found his way into the back office. He's just about to smash the monitors until he overhears Hank screaming. Quite loudly, I might add.
Hank?
This man is absolutely sending that shit. He tries to hide in a storage closet as Jeff calls out to him from the hall. Hank can't get the door open, and when he turns the light on, Bonnie is behind him, so he lets out another girlish scream and is killed off camera by Bonnie. According to Hank's actor, Bonnie's method of murder involved shaking him until his bones were crushed before punching him in the stomach. Yikes. This death could also be a reference to the fact that one of Bonnie's common locations was a supply closet in the left corridor. Bonnie exits the closet, turning his attention to Jeff, who drops his crowbar and bolts back into the office. The scene has some insane editing to hide the fact that Jeff was right next to the loading bay door that they broke into. Behind him is the door that Bob couldn't open, which we know is the hall that Chica walked past earlier in the kitchen, because right next to that door is the ventilation fan. And what room did the vandals walk in before starting their assault? The kitchen. You can even see sunlight when they come through the door, and that means when he drops the crowbar, he's standing precisely on the opposite side of this corner. That means that at the beginning of the movie, when we're seeing from Foxy's perspective, this is the bay door that they broke into. And Jeff was probably 6 to 8 strides away from freedom when he dropped his crowbar. Instead, we then see him running and dropping coins. But from the wall pattern, we can tell he's actually teleported backwards, half of this hall's length closer to Bonnie, to film this shot. See the brick pattern in the cinder block columns? This is the only hallway in the movie that has that. You can also see the 45-degree corner at the end of the hall, which is where he was standing when he drops the crowbar. He's then shown running through the corridor behind the stage, past the storage room Bob came out of at the beginning of the movie. You can tell because the pipes on the wall are the same. That means around that corner right there, Bonnie would be standing outside the closet he just killed Hank in. Here's a basic diagram. That means he's running directly at Bonnie. But don't worry guys, because seconds later, they just have him turn around and start running the other direction. These are the same hallway. If you do a frame by frame, they just change the lighting slightly. I also need to point out though, this is really well done editing wise. So none of this is really noticeable when you're watching the movie at a normal pace. Our vandal then runs into the office, which is on the correct side of the building as he was running originally, if we just ignore him teleporting into the back rooms. On his way there, he would have passed the loading bay doors, which is behind this wall hall and through the double doors that we saw Foxy standing in front of for a split second during night 2. So to get here, he would have to have run past the open exit. He tries the phone to no avail, only hearing childish laughter on the line. He literally just called his buddies on his cell phone earlier. Just use that phone. He starts looking at the security cameras, spotting Bonnie and Chica staring him down, right next to a vent. I swear to God, Bonnie looks like he's questioning Jeff's lack of maidens, so Chica leans down, which we see from a different camera angle, obscuring the cupcake. We then see the cupcake is gone, and look at the sass in Bonnie's face when he looks back up into the camera. He's given the rock a run for his money. Jeff runs to the vent and holds it shut as the cupcake smashes against it. Everything goes silent as the office door swings open, and believing the coast is clear, he ventures out of the room. The door slams shut behind him as Foxy's pirate song can be heard from down the hall. In a scene mirroring the beginning of the movie, Jeff frantically tries to open the emergency exit, and we'll come back to this door later because I noticed something hilarious about it that is now my personal headcanon. Foxy glares at the end of the hallway. This death is the first and only in the movie to use the jump scare sound from the first game. The sound effect, known as X-Scream in the files, is believed to originate from the 1981 British horror movie called Inseminoid, specifically a scene where a woman gives birth to 2 alien twins. It's not a one-to-one of the original, having been altered to not sound like a pregnant woman screaming. We cut to Max inside the restaurant, who's come to see what's taking so long. That's it, that's the Bob door. So again, Jeff would have had to run past the open door to get into the office. While walking around, she spots a little boy, who tells her to follow him. Which, word of advice, do not follow random creepy children in an abandoned pizza restaurant. That was mistake number 1 for Max. She finds her way into what appears to be the storage room of the spare animatronic, referred to in the game as backstage, and is where Bob died at the beginning of the movie. Do not worry about this pile of animatronic suits, I will talk about them later in the video. Alright, so here's mistake number 2. Do not play hot or cold with mysterious pizza place children. Just walk away. She can clearly hear a child's voice inside of Freddy, so she sets up a chair and begins peering into his mouth, before being grabbed by a child's hand, and off screen we see her get bitten in half. And probably the worst CGI of the entire movie. She's literally got intestines hanging out for a couple frames of the shadow that just vanish before her lower half hits the floor. Apparently in the original script of the movie, Max was supposed to die in a pool of blue paint. It definitely sounds like we got a better kill, but it definitely looks a little silly if you stare at it for too long. I'm much more a fan of the cutaway kills personally, leaves more to the imagination. Later at home, probably some bit before Mike's bedtime, he finds Abby drawing in the living room and tries to ask her what she's working on. I have absolutely no clue what the fuck that's supposed to be, but obviously Mike can't afford any art lessons for her. She's pretty cold with her brother, probably still upset she wasn't allowed to come with him to work, and he tries to win her over with the security badge from the prize counter, with no success. He puts the badge into a drawer that happens to include the custody papers, and tells Abby that he's trying his best. Either feeling bad about her original reaction to Mike's gift, or just cause she's a little shit, she decides to go grab the badge from the drawer, inadvertently finding the custody papers. Mike does a horrendous job of handling the situation, before they're interrupted by a knock at the door. It's Vanessa, who gets a chance to meet Abby, originally mistaking her as Mike's daughter. This is an understandable assumption, since Mike has to be somewhere in his late 20s to early 30s. Vanessa explains someone broke into Freddy's and that she found Mike's sleeping pills in the building. She tells him he could be liable for criminal negligence if he was too drugged up to remember to lock the door. As a viewer, this is strange though, considering that the vandals very obviously broke into the loading dock. They were also killed on the scene, so their cars should still be there, and she should be able to trace their— oh shit. This shows us that she's not being completely forthcoming with Mike. He asks Vanessa to go on a walk with him, and they settle next to a creek. Also, why the fuck is that entire house completely falling over? I didn't notice this the first 5 times I watched the movie. It's literally just scrap wood. Mike decided to tell Vanessa about his brother Garrett, the fact he watched him get kidnapped, and that the case was never solved. He then explains the dream theory he's been running on, and that he tries to have the same dream every night in an attempt to see the face of the kidnapper. We also vaguely learn from this conversation what happened to Mike's parents, only being told told that his mother died a few years back and that his father couldn't take it afterwards, implying he committed suicide from the grief. Mike talks about how perfect their life used to be and everything like that, but I gotta stop you right here, Chief. What does any of this have to do with criminal negligence? It doesn't matter why you were high off your gourd during work hours. You were high off your gourd, so you might be liable for the crimes committed that morning. Vanessa yeets his sleeping pills into the creek and tells him to stay awake on the job. Please don't yeet sleeping pills into creeks. Those fish are gonna have a really hard time swimming under the influence. Later that night, Mike tries to get a hold of Max, who's not shown up to babysit, probably because she's preoccupied taking an extended nap on the storage room floor. Having no other choice, since CPS frowns upon leaving young children alone all night, Mike reluctantly takes Abby into work with him. When they get there, Abby already looks extremely happy. Mike is like, listen here, you little shit. You're gonna stay in my office all night. Yep. This isn't a vacation. And you're not here to have fun. Totally. You're gonna sit there until my shift is over, okay? Absolutely. Her first impression of the place is definitely not the best. The dining room's still completely trashed from that morning. Mike sets her up in a little tent to sleep in while he gets to work fixing the place up. He notices some of Hank's blood on the supply room door, but he's jump scared by Balloon Boy before he has time to process it, officially cementing it as a running gag. He cleans the place up pretty nicely, all while nothing out of the ordinary occurs. He's not attacked, he doesn't hear anything weird, and when he's done, he heads back to the office to try and experience the kidnapping dream again. While he's asleep, we experience the perspective of someone entering the office. Before a child's voice whispers to Abby, she wakes up and seeing Mike is asleep, says she'll be right back. It appears that she just needed to use the restroom, but when she comes out into the main dining room, she believes someone is behind the curtains and calls for them to come out. This wakes Freddy, who ominously approaches Abby, before we cut away to Mike's dream. He tries to talk to the blonde boy, who appears to be the leader of the pack. Mike says he doesn't know how they're in his dream, but he knows they're the kids who went missing in the restaurant, and that he just wants to find out who took Garrett. The boy asks what Mike will give in exchange for their help, to which he says he'll give anything. He then hears the faint screams of his sister, and when he turns back, the boy has vanished, leaving behind nothing but a drawing in the dirt of a rabbit, the same one we saw in the drawing at the beginning of the movie. Upon waking up, Mike sees Abby is missing, and hears her screams again in the dining room. He finds her surrounded by the animatronics, but instead of being ripped to shreds, she's being tickled, and is made friends with them all. She introduces Mike as her brother, and Freddy, who initially looked like he was ready to attack, calms down. I just have to stop to point out a problem here. How the fuck are you tickling anything with those paws, bro? It don't make no sense, and it was definitely just the best thing they could come up with to fake out the audience, as well as Mike, who was seriously ready to go WWE with that chair. Mike is immediately in disbelief, and thinks someone has to be playing a prank on him, controlling the animatronics from out of sight. Abby says it's okay, and that the animatronics are actually upstanding citizens who only want to do fun and whimsy things, while we, the audience, are well aware that earlier that day, they systematically murdered a gang of vandals. Mike is ready to fuck off immediately, but before they do, Abby gives them a drawing of a heart, saying the animatronics really love pictures. She gives Freddy one last hug, and that completes Mike's third night. Returning home, Mike is completely gobsmacked, staring at his sister like some sort of alien. He puts her to bed, and while thinking, he takes a closer look at her drawings, quickly realizing that the kids he saw in his dreams at Freddy's are the same imaginary friends Abby talks to. Though it appears that none of these close-up images, including the Bonnie kid and Foxy kid, are actually in any of the drawings Mike is holding. The next morning, Mike directly asks his sister if her friends are ghosts.
Of course. How else could they make the robot to move?
Yeah, Mike, you fucking dumbass. He then asks Abby if she remembers her older brother Garrett, before bringing up one of her drawings, which she says is of Garrett's kidnapping, something she was never told the details of. Mike asks if the kids ever talk about what the driver of the car looked like, but she says all they talk about is a yellow rabbit, but she'll ask them about it the next time she can. This brings into question a number of things. How and why were these ghost children from some unknown restaurant talking to Abby in particular, before she or Mike had anything to do with Freddy? Does Abby possess some kind of psychic ability? These ghosts are also much older than her, and while the timeline for when this movie takes place isn't set in stone, the director states it's placed around the year 2000. That means they've been dead for like 20 years and they just chose to talk to Abby. It's also not explained how long they've been communicating with her, though we can hypothesize that her stunted social skills imply that it's been for her entire life. But this theory falls apart fast when you realize that none of the pictures ever shown before that point in the movie showed any of the ghost children. So the only explanation is that after Mike started working there, they somehow got into contact with her, and she'd have to have drawn those pictures sometime between night 1 and night 3. We cut back to Freddy's. Vanessa's inside, staring at the wall of drawings, as the laughs and screams of children are heard echoing through her mind. It's pretty clear by this point she has some deeper knowledge on the disappearance of children back in the 80s. Abby points out that Vanessa is there and says the animatronics know her and think she's nice. When they get inside, Abby says hi to Vanessa before immediately heading over to the stage, and Mike confronts her about not telling him the animatronics were possessed. Before this boils over in any way, Abby calls the two over to kick off one of the strangest and most misunderstood scenes in the movie. She wants to build a fort with the animatronics, and while Mike thinks it's dangerous, Vanessa is down to clown from the jump. There's then a minute-long montage of the killer animatronics building a fort to the tune of some music. Now, we have actively witnessed every single one of these guys murder people earlier in the film, so why are they now being all happy-go-lucky? This brings us back to why the script for the movie took so long. Scott wanted it to be crystal clear that the spirits controlling the animatronics were those of innocent children. This scene was specifically made to contrast the actions we saw earlier in the film, to make you ask why a bunch of kids would be killing people when they seem like they'd be down to just chillax and build forts all day. My main criticism of the scene doesn't have anything to do with its purpose, but its execution. How the fuck did all these animatronics get into the fort on the floor? They have zero shimmy skills, and you'd have to build the fort around them to accomplish this. Unrelated note, these are the same tables they had at the Five Guys I worked at back in high school. Abby says what can only be more imaginary kid talk about it going to rain soon. So Vanessa says she'll go look for something to use as a roof, and Mike joins her. Off in a storage room, she looks for tablecloths, which she knows was kept there for big events. Mike asks how she knows this, and before answering, he spots a doll-looking animatronic of some sort. Going over to touch it, Vanessa stops him, saying those are spring locks, a feature of older animatronic models meant to keep the robotic parts in place to make room for someone to wear it as a suit. Though they're incredibly faulty, spring lock suits were first mentioned in FNAF 3. The technology is fictional, so it's only been speculated how they work, but we understand the point is to move all the electronics of the animatronic towards the outside layer of the suit, to make room for a person to slip into a newly created space. This is achieved through some sort of spring locking mechanism that I personally believe would be connected to a single ratchet point on the suit that pulls all the locks into place at the same time. Using what we've heard in the games is some sort of proprietary hand crank. There are different types of spring-loaded locks in the real world, and I happen to have one in my kitchen. When I press up on it, the pin locks into place, becoming spring-loaded. To do this in the suit, you'd use the hand crank tool. This would then make a space inside of the suit as all the animatronic parts are pulled away from the center, creating enough room for someone to slip inside. But when the lock fails, everything snaps back into place immediately, so spring lock pins or hooks, as well as animatronic pieces, get torpedoed into your body at Mach Jesus. The only protocol for this type of failure was to run off into a back room to avoid bleeding out in front of customers. The two suits that we know have spring locks are the Golden Bonnie and Golden Freddy suits, otherwise known as Spring Bonnie and Fredbear. Spring Bonnie is the suit we see the killer wearing in the arcade opening, and is the yellow rabbit the ghost children talk about. Now, I take a bit of an issue with the design of the spring locks in the movie, because these things ain't holding back shit. There's literally nothing being pushed out of the way here, and the arms and legs don't look hollow at all, instead appearing to be giant robot limbs rather than a suit with a robot skeleton in them. So how was anyone supposed to fit in this thing? It looks like it's too small to fit anything larger than a small Wait a second. Mike confronts Vanessa, realizing she knows more than someone who just loved the restaurant when they were a kid, or a cop that drives by every once in a while. He's specifically upset that Vanessa knows about stuff as dangerous as the spring locks lying around and ghost spirits controlling robots, but didn't tell him about any of it. He argues, what if Abby had gotten her on that spring lock suit, to which Vanessa deflects, saying Mike is the one who brought her into the restaurant.
What I can't wrap my head around is why.
Wait, you don't understand why Mike had to bring his sister to work when his babysitter vanished? That's like the simplest part about this whole thing. This is just really shitty dialogue, there's no way around it. Mike's response is even worse though, because he just doesn't explain the very simple and true point that his babysitter ghosted him. He instead explains his additional motive, using Abby to ask about Garrett's kidnapping, because the ghost kids don't seem to like him nearly as much as they like Abby. Vanessa gets very aggressive, telling Mike he needs to drop this and let go of trying to figure figure it out, which leads him to asking who she is and why she cares about it, and she claims to simply be someone trying to help. In the party room, Abby's busting it down with the other animatronics, while Mike is asking Vanessa to explain more to him about what's going on. They're interrupted by Abby attempting to strum Bonnie's guitar. She touches it and is electrocuted, in probably one of the worst edited scenes in the movie. For one frame of the sparking, the lighting effect used is just missing on the top eighth of the screen, and when we cut to Abby, she doesn't actually fall back. She closes her eyes, takes a step backwards, and does this thing with her arms like she's trying to draw a shape in the air. Why the fuck is it only Asian people doing it? It looks really stupid, and it's capped off with a fade from white to her lying on the ground. This scene was foreshadowed earlier in the movie when Bonnie strummed the guitar and it shorted out, but the first time it shut off all the animatronics, while this time they're all just fine. Later that night, Vanessa tells Mike to go home, and he asks what she was afraid of when he mentioned using Abby to ask the ghost children for help. I don't know, Mike, maybe it's the fact they're fucking ghost children. She aggressively tells Mike that he can do whatever he wants with his own life, but if he ever brings Abby back, she'll just straight up shoot him. I really don't think cops are allowed to do that, but I'm pretty sure they're not supposed to be building table forts with a bunch of dead kids, so we're already fairly outside the realm of normal police procedure, and with that argument, we conclude night 4. At home, Mike takes a long second before making a hard phone call, asking the person on the other end for help. The next morning, as bacon cooks in the kitchen, Mike wakes Abby and tells her to get ready and come out of her room to talk. When she gets there, she finds her aunt and immediately assumes the worst. Because Mike is literally the worst communicator of all time, he just says stuff like, "If you just sit down, we'll explain everything to you. It's not what you think it is." Abby proclaims to hate Mike before running off to her room. The reality of the situation is that Mike reluctantly asked Aunt Jane to babysit for him, since he has no other options. And instead of just saying that, he was all vague, which upset Abby to the point she scribbled out his face on all her drawings. While this wasn't about custody over Abby, Jane makes it very clear that she wants to discuss the matter further when he gets back from work. I need to make a side note here too. There have been 4 people to vanish in the last few days, and 2 of them were in cahoots with Aunt Jane. Yet it's never brought up, from her perspective, that they completely ghosted her, since she never received any updates on trashing Freddy's. We move to a scene of Mike purchasing another bottle of sleeping pills, which is pretty funny. The pharmacist tries to give him advice on what helps him sleep, and Mike just doesn't give a shit. Now, instead of showing up for his normal shift, which would be night 5 of his employment, Mike shows up during the day, planning on using the sleeping pills to continue his previous negotiations with the ghost children. There's a very cool shot of Mike dozing off, and as he does, his face lightens up to indicate he's entering the camping trip dream. When Mike finally begins dreaming, he immediately notices it's completely different than the memory of what happened. Garrett is sitting at the table with his parents as they get ready to eat, instead of being kidnapped. Mike says this isn't how it happened and can't be real, and the ghost children appear, the leader telling him this could be real. Mike says he just wants to know who took his brother, while the ghost kids try to convince him that what he actually wants is to save his brother, and that he can be with his family again, having this dream every night, only if he gives them whatever they want, like he promised to on the 3rd night. They say they want Abby, and Mike is hesitant, until his family starts trying to convince him that she's better off being given to the ghost children. His mother even mirrors language throughout the movie, that he was never meant to be the one taking care of her, and that it's time to let her go. Mike begins crying and agrees with his mother and younger brother, but as he caresses his brother's face, we're shown a stark contrast in how this dream Garrett doesn't respond at all to Mike's affection, compared to Abby being happy to see him home. He immediately regrets his decision and tries to go back on it, but the children all vanish, and as he screams for them to stay away from his sister, they all begin attacking him one by one. Injuries we know follow him into the real world. The children vanish, and when he wakes up, he's strapped to the same chair that Bob died in at the beginning of the movie. And as the Razor mask approaches, thanks to Bob starting the job, he's able to get free a screw to escape. It appears it was already completely unscrewed, and that Bob unfortunately just wasn't fast enough to pull it out of the hinge it was holding together. Mike frees his other hand and jumps out of the way in time to not get his face minced. While crawling on the floor, Mike notices Max's body stuffed into an animatronic suit, or at least the upper half that got bitten off. We get a good shot of the vandals' bodies, and they haven't all been put into suits. The only 2 unrecognizable costumes are Max and Hank. Hank is in a dog costume that's actually a reference to the first major hoax in FNAF history, Sparky the dog. The hoax claimed there was an insanely low chance that a completely harmless dog animatronic named Sparky could show up in some of the cameras. There was actually drama about this hoax because a former friend of the guy who came up with it came out and tried to take credit for it. And it wasn't until much later that the actual creator came out with proof that it was him and not the other guy that created the hoax. Max appears to be in a purple animatronic suit, which actually comes from an Easter egg in FNAF 2. In a backroom camera, you can sometimes spot a pitch black Freddy suit with glowing eyes, slouched against a wall. It's revealed in later spin-off games that the suit is actually purple and named Shadow Freddy. Carl is dead on the floor, his face still chewed, and Alex's brother Jeff only has a single piece of a suit laying across his lap. This is Mike's first sign of actual murderous intent from the animatronics, and he quickly takes his chance to book it towards an exit door. This is the same door Jeff tried earlier in the movie, and it still won't budge. Now is when I want to point out that back in the original scene where the vandals broke in, we actually got a shot of the loading bay on the side of the building. The security room is right here, but as you can see, there is no exit door where the end of the hallway would be. Now this is pretty normal with movies. You'll have an exterior building, but a staged interior elsewhere to make recording easier. And a lot of the times, the two don't line up perfectly. But fuck that. I just like to think of this door as a real false door that doesn't lead anywhere, like the Winchester Mansion or something. Like it's specifically used to corner people who mistake it for a real exit so they'll die. We hear the familiar sound of Foxy preparing to charge and see him rush a screaming Mike. Back at the house, Jane knocks on Abby's door, trying to coax her out before quickly giving up and watching TV instead. While she's getting comfortable, we see a character who's not yet made an appearance in the background, before hearing a thud in the living room from Abby's perspective. She comes out of her room to find Golden Freddy, an animatronic I mentioned briefly earlier. Golden Freddy is very different than the rest of the animatronics, and originally was an Easter egg that apparently had a 1 in 100,000 chance of happening. He'd appear in the office and jump scare you before crashing the game. Golden Freddy is one of the two known spring lock suits in the series. In the game lore, it's thought that the spirit of Golden Freddy is a girl named Cassidy, while in the movie, it's made clear in this scene that the blonde boy leading the pack of ghost children is the one possessing him. This is also the explanation for any keen-eyed viewers who counted 5 children but only 4 animatronics. Another thing to note that's really important to the game's lore is that Golden Freddy lacks the robotic ability to move, because he's seen as more of a ghostly or psychic manifestation compared to the physical nature and limitations of the other animatronics. Now you'd think they got rid of this idea in the movie because, for starters, he's literally standing up, but we never see him actually walk or move in the movie, outside of a joke scene. And this was intentional because originally there was a mistake that Scott caught where a scene was going to be filmed with Golden Freddy moving, that he later told them they had to remove. So it's important to understand that while he's not slouched over, according to Scott, this is an accurate enough representation of the immobile nature of Golden Freddy. Now in my opinion, this scene and the next few scenes are probably the worst in the movie, bordering on stupid. First off, how the fuck did Golden Freddy find Mike's house in the first place? Cope says he learned it in Mike's mind, while the ghost kids were in his dreams, which I guess could be possible, but they couldn't even recreate his parents and younger brother in a believable way, which you'd imagine would be easier if they did have access to his entire mind. Golden Freddy's host begins persuading Abby to come with him to the restaurant, saying all the other kids are waiting for her. So she grabs her backpack from the living room and notices Aunt Jane's body on the ground. A body, I might add, that she had to pass by to get to her backpack. The blonde boy goes, "Silly Aunt Jane. She fell asleep." Abby is just like, yep. I guess that makes sense. And then just moves on, asking how they plan to get to the restaurant. Now, everything in the movie to about this point basically made sense. But from here on, there are going to be way more plot holes, and a lot is left unexplained as we head into the climax. Next is a comedic scene where Abby calls a taxi, and the YouTuber Corey X Kenshin picks her up. He hears someone else get in and shake the entire car, and when he looks up in the mirror, he sees Golden Freddy before freaking out.
What the? Oh my goodness!
It is very funny, I can agree, but the problem is Golden Freddy isn't supposed to move. Since we didn't see him move, it technically doesn't count, but it's still annoying since Scott went through the effort of taking out a scene of him walking. But he did have to physically open the door and get in the taxi. Also, I'm ignoring the fact he definitely can't fit in this car because this is a joke scene. As the car takes off, we cut to Mike waking up after being attacked by Foxy. He's been patched up by Vanessa, who says she's taken him to a police supply outpost after she found him badly hurt. correct. It is never explained how Mike survived being attacked by Foxy, and it's sort of just assumed Vanessa was able to walk in at the perfect time, mid-murder attempt, and carry him out on her own past the murderous animatronics into this fictional supply station. Mike connects the dots that Vanessa must have known the animatronics would try to kill him, as well as the fact that they killed Max and company. Vanessa just responds with, "It's complicated." Like that means absolutely anything when she's complicit in multiple paranormal murders. Yeah, I'm gonna guess it's a little complicated. She claims the vandals were not innocent, which is true, but her argument just ignores the fact that Mike is innocent in all of this. He gets mad because they could have killed Abby and Vanessa didn't say anything, even though she did. She said if Mike wants to keep coming to work, it was fine, but she literally threatened to gun him down in the streets if he ever brought Abby again. Mike then explains his deal to give Abby to the ghost kids, and Vanessa says it's because they want to kill her and turn her into a fellow ghost child. At this moment, Abby has made it to the restaurant and Golden Freddy vanishes as she enters. We then go back and forth between Abby walking through the restaurant and Vanessa explaining the kids disappearing in the 80s, telling Mike that the man who murdered them knew the police would never check inside the suits. So it's not only their spirits in the animatronics, their physical bodies were also stuffed inside of them. She says that they don't want to hurt people, but the man who murdered them somehow influences them into doing so. Mike asks who the man is, and Vanessa reveals that not only is the killer William Afton, but he's also her father. Dun dun dun! This is a massive difference from the games. Never is it implied that Vanessa is anything but a follower of Afton, but now she's his daughter, which definitely adds an extra layer of intrigue. Now the way Mike connects his brother's kidnapping to William Afton is just a little bit silly. He remembers Garrett having a toy plane when he was kidnapped, and afterwards he gave his daughter that same toy plane, which I guess that works. Vanessa claims to have not known about Garrett until after they met, and Mike is understandably pissed. She's crying and stuff and seems remorseful, so we're just supposed to ignore the fact that she was totally chill with letting Mike get murked a single night ago, as well as her being complicit in the murder of at least 6 children and at least 5 adults we've seen. The two begin to suit up with tasers and prods, with electricity being the key to beating the animatronics. This is a concept likely pulled from FNAF 6 Pizzeria Simulator, where during the salvage segment, you'd use a taser to pacify the animatronics. Vanessa refuses to go with Mike to the restaurant, saying if William Afton is there, she'd be completely useless. But why is she assuming William Afton would be there in the first place when there haven't been any signs of him showing up this entire time? This is pretty much just a setup for her arrival at the last second, because if they both went in guns blazing, the encounter would probably be far less interesting. Mike is given a cop car and immediately speeds off to the restaurant. Another big hole in the writing. He was just at the restaurant, and you know who wasn't there? Abby. She was left at home, being watched by Aunt Jane. So if he were to act with the information he had, he'd probably be heading home to check on her. He probably wouldn't even be suiting up, because for all he knows by this point, the animatronics are limited to the restaurant, and as long as they don't go back, they'll be safe. At the same time Mike is sneaking in through a vent, Chica is luring Abby behind the stage. He avoids being spotted by Bonnie and Freddy before knocking them both out, throwing a bucket of water on stage to tase them both. I gotta give the movie props for not only introducing these 2 buckets of water earlier in the film, but maintaining in later scenes that they hadn't moved from where Mike ends up finding them. Gold star to you, FNAF movie. With 2 of the animatronics down, Chica has led Abby into the same backstage room that Mike was almost killed in earlier that night. In the middle of the room is the springlock suit we saw earlier, which I should now mention looks very similar to the Ella doll from the Silver Eyes novel. Suddenly, Chica grabs Abby and tries shoving her into the springlocks. It's unclear if they want her to just die from the springlocks or if this is actually the suit they want her to inhabit, but the point is, they're trying to kill her. This is definitely the worst scene in terms of established abilities of these animatronics. They were tearing people apart earlier in the movie, crushing a grown man to death in a closet, chomping people in half, but now Chica is like rocking Abby back and forth for some reason. Also, what the fuck is going on here? Abby's literally touching the fucking springlocks in this scene. Come on, guys. Mike storms in, giving Abby time to run, and Chica is disabled with a taser shot to the eye. The two then have a moment where Mike recognizes he's been stuck in the past, and that Abby is the most important thing to him him, so he needs to do a better job at focusing on her rather than worrying about something he can't change. Abby's like, that's awesome, love you too bro, but we should probably get the fuck out of here before these things kill us. Now the editing on this next scene is wacky, so get ready for what I call the repeating hallway and what my friends call Charlie Day level schizo posting. While trying to escape through the halls, we first see this door. It's seen earlier in the movie as another entrance to the kitchen. No pipes or conduits on the wall next to it, and a vent on the left, the same vent that Chica stuck the cupcake in earlier in the movie. We see Mike running down this hall. Same door, same vent. Then we cut to Abby. This is not the same hall. In fact, the corner is gone. That's a fucking door to her right. Specifically, the supply closet Bonnie murdered Hank in. There's also a pipe in the corner, as well as a conduit on the wall next to her. As they turn this second corner, we see them run past that same door. Door, pipe, conduit. Mike looks back the direction they were running from, and we're shown a flipped version of the wrong hallway. Door, pipe, conduit. This corner is the one Mike is standing in right now as he looks backward. Why did they do this? I have no idea. This also means this part of the hallway is the same one we were shown Abby running down. You can see the two power boxes in the flipped hallway. I had to up the quality of the diagram for this one, but I really think it helps explain this. So that means they turn one corner, use footage of Mike running down that hall, but instead of footage of Abby running down that hall, they take footage of her running down the next hallway for whatever reason, and then when Mike looks back, the previous corner and hallway turn into the current corner and hallway, but flipped. As far as I can guess, for some reason, they didn't have a shot of Abby running down that first hallway, so they just used a shot of the second hall. It was probably because they wanted to emphasize Mike pulling the prod out, because that's about to come up in the next scene. While trying to escape through the corridors, the cupcake grabs Mike by the ankle. Something I find a little dumb here is that Mike physically slides backwards as if he was being yanked away by something, but it's just the cupcake biting him. That cupcake doesn't have any leverage. Mike tells Abby to run. Wait, does she run back in the opposite direction? Wait, hold on. Mike tells Abby to run, and she continues in the same direction they were going. This would have led her to the Bob door, but instead, Abby is shown coming out onto the main stage. This means that she backtracked all the way to the beginning of the corridor they just ran down, for no discernible reason. The room that she was almost murdered in is right there behind the stage. I actually got so confused trying to figure this out that I found a source filmmaker map of the interior of the building. So the direction she was running was towards the loading bay we discussed earlier, which would have led to the security office or the kitchen before she teleports all the way back to the stage. This is only the beginning of Abby's non-Euclidean behavior in the next few scenes. As she heads into the dining room, Foxy's host spirit is seen watching her from his pirate cove before Foxy comes out to chase her. It's a really fun shot where the kid backs up slowly, and as he fades out of view, Foxy moves forward to take his place. Around now, Mike kicks the cupcake off his leg, giving him enough time to grab the cattle prod, and he's able to disable the cupcake on its next lunge. Abby is hiding very poorly in the arcade, and right before Foxy finds her behind a centipede cabinet, she somehow teleports all the way over into the ball pit. How the fuck? Even if she tried crawling under the cabinets, Foxy would probably have seen her, but these kinds of reverse fake outs from the victim is common in horror films. Foxy suspects the tomfuckery and immediately starts making his way to the ball pit. Mike limps his way into the dining room looking for his sister, which actually happens from a door that makes sense. He comes through the kitchen, which would have been down the hall and to the left of where he was, but he does still teleport from behind this bench to in front of it when instead of finding Abby, he runs into the one and only Spring Bonnie, aka the Yellow Rabbit, making his first appearance on the big screen. All things considered, the suit being at least 20 years old, it doesn't look half bad. Half of it looks burned or something, but the entire left side looks fine. I also need to quickly point out, they use way too heavy of a sound effect for the third step, and it sounds noticeably off. They should have used something less beefy like the first step sound because he's basically tiptoeing that third one. Not a big deal, but I thought it was worth pointing out. Mike immediately tries his taser again, but it doesn't work. And we know it's because there's an actual person, William Afton, inside the Springlock suit. Mike gets thrown a good 15 feet by Afton, which implies something I've always been curious about. Are the Springlock suits like some sort of power armor? Like, does the mechanical stuff going on in the suit make the wearer stronger? I'd imagine it would need to, because these animatronics look extremely heavy, and you'd not be able to just wear one if you aren't even strong enough to pick one up, unless it's doing a lot of the lifting for you while you're wearing it. Back in the ball pit, Foxy moves closer and closer, and I'm sorry, but these shots look really dumb. It appears to get this little hole to film Abby in the ball pit, they glued a bunch of balls together to form a wall, and then had her look through it. They're also not even the same balls in the pit. They're much more transparent and the colors are way lighter. I'm about 23% sure that this angle showing Foxy is CGI, because the balls move very strangely, almost like they're breathing. An electric shock is heard and Abby is grabbed by Vanessa. You could see the right colored balls behind this wall, who says she needs to get Abby somewhere safe so she can help her brother. She does not do this, because Abby will materialize in the danger zone later. William Afton taunts Mike, saying he killed his brother and now he's going to kill him. He calls on the other animatronics to wake up and play, and we see them all recover from the tasers. Afton says, "The little ones tell me you have a sister, she'll love it here." But it's never explained how he communicates with the animatronics. Mike could only talk to them in dreams, and he had to be inside the restaurant for that. So I don't know, maybe William Afton has some kind of loft and he's been watching all this happen. Mike's not hearing any of this. Man straight up snoozing on the floor after the last kick. But before Afton finishes the job, Vanessa steps in, telling him to drop the knife or she'll shoot. He then takes off the mask, and it's revealed that William Afton is none other than Shaggy Rogers. So William Afton is actually Steve Raglan, the career counselor from the beginning of the movie. Now, while this Steve character is new to the movie, it was probably pretty obvious to most viewers due to his strange behavior after learning Mike's last name. Like I said earlier, some people are a fan of that line, but I really think it just comes off like something you'd hear out of a school play. Afton chides Vanessa, saying that even though she's forgotten her loyalties, the animatronics haven't. And now is the start of a lot of positional inconsistencies. I'm gonna let the scene play out before I explain it though. Abby shows up and begins freaking out over the state of Mike. William Afton begins walking towards Vanessa, calling her bluff about shooting him, to which Vanessa actually does shoot him. She also closes her eyes right before firing. Not very policewoman of her, but it's probably because she can't stand physically watching as she shoots her dad. Now let's break down the positions of our characters using the map I found. It's not a one-to-one, but it's pretty decent, and all these randomly placed tables are gonna have to get moved. For starters, Mike has moved while passed out, no longer having his ass out, and up to this point, William Afton has been standing over Mike behind his head, around this kitchen restroom corner. We don't hear Afton walk or move at all while talking to Vanessa, because every time he does there's a loud sound effect for it. But then when Abby shows up, she approaches from behind Mike, and Afton is just gone. That means she's approaching from the front door, office, kitchen, and bathroom side of the building. How did she get over there unseen during Mike and William's fight, while Vanessa is still on the ball pit side of the building? Afton then walks towards Vanessa, and when he gets shot, we can see Mike on the floor in front of the restroom side. But Abby has just vanished again. I understand these action scenes are a bit scattered, but for all these mistakes, I'm gonna have to take back my gold star over the water buckets, because continuity is just not existent in this last third of the movie. After Vanessa shoots Afton, the animatronics look pretty pissed, and Mike comes to on the floor. He looks up at the wall of drawings and realizes how Afton must be controlling the kids. Just like the doctor explained earlier in the movie, images are how kids who can't communicate understand the world around them, and it was shown earlier in the movie that the ghost kids enjoy drawings. Mike tells his sister she needs to draw what really happened to the kids to try and break them out of Afton's control. I actually really like this idea despite how flimsy the logic is, because we now have a perfect way to explain why these ghost kids were listening to Afton while maintaining that deep down they are still innocent. After being shot, William Afton attacks Vanessa, knocking her gun away and chastising her for letting everything get this far. The movie tries to do this cheeky thing where William says, "You had one job, keep an eye on him and kill him if you got too close," to which Vanessa responds,
"That's 2 jobs.
This is supposed to mirror a similar line Mike said when he was offered the job, after being told that the only thing he had to worry about was keeping people out and keeping the place tidy.
That's 2 things.
Now, this is definitely supposed to be a callback to that line, but Vanessa has never heard Mike say this, so it doesn't make sense as a callback for her to respond to her dad that way. Now might also be a good time to talk about how it's never explained what the hell is even going on here. It doesn't seem like Afton is murdering many people at this place, with all of his previous victims we know about being Garrett and the 5 other children in the 80s and Bob at the beginning of the movie. Was Afton dormant for decades until now, or has Vanessa been helping him kill and dispose of bodies in the restaurant restaurant during that time? If so, why did she just now decide to stop helping him after an untold number of victims? If this is the start of a new killing spree, which could explain her hesitation, was Bob just not her type, so she let him die? By this point, I'm convinced Abby is already dead because of how often she's teleporting. And now, while Vanessa is being choked by William Afton in the entrance to the arcade right here, Abby somehow makes it past them to grab this out of order sign on a pinball machine in front of the ball pit. She then draws something on it real quick before losing her ghostly abilities and having to walk right past Afton and Vanessa. He lets go of his daughter to try to stop Abby as she takes down the drawing of the yellow rabbit holding hands with the kids. Vanessa distracts Afton for a bit longer by grabbing onto his hand, and her reward for this is to be stabbed through the stomach by her own father. The CGI on the close-up is definitely not great, and they can't really decide how much of the knife is supposed to be inside of her, with the feathering on the mask being a bit too soft. So some of her pants color is showing through on top of the knife while there's a gleam on it. It'll get funnier later on, don't worry. Afton almost looks upset for a moment as his daughter falls to the floor, but he then turns his attention back to Abby as she sticks her photo up on the wall. And right as she does, the power in the building shuts off. Apparently Mike has been running to the breaker for no understandable reason. Like, how would he know that the power would go off in that exact moment and need to be turned back on? It just looks like this guy was leaving his sister and Vanessa to deal with Afton by themselves. Mike flips on the power, but it doesn't actually turn everything else on like it always has. It just turns on one light pointed directly at Abby's drawing, a depiction of the yellow rabbit holding a knife in the middle of the dead children. I'll chalk this one up to ghostly influence though, and the animatronics begin remembering their deaths. And now is when we get to the big moment where his victims confront him. The cupcake lunges and tears a giant chunk out of his suit, revealing the spring locks just as they begin to fail, tearing right into Afton's body. Now this is one of my favorite parts about the FNAF lore. It's literally understood that these suits suck so much ass that the sweat your body produces could set off the spring locks and kill you. Once a single one fails, the blood spurting from the wound can then cause a chain reaction, which is what I like to think happened here. The scene is pretty great. The animatronics standing around him, watching as each spring lock fails, as William Afton reaches for his spring Bonnie head. The scene is then ruined by him saying, "I always come back," before putting the head on. The animatronics look just as confused as I was. This line is from Pizzeria Simulator. It's heard during a jump scare while salvaging a scrap trap. The burnt, decaying remains of Springtrap, who's the entity William Afton turns into after his death in the suit.
I always come back.
By that point, it's his second mainline appearance. First with FNAF 3 as the main antagonist, and now FNAF 6 as a secondary antagonist. So canonically, it's like the third time he's survived dying. First in the suit, second in the burning of the FNAF 3 location, and now he's made his way to the pizzeria in FNAF 6. In the movie, this line doesn't make any sense, and lacks any and all context as to what he means when he says he'll always come back. It's clearly just fan service, and in my opinion, it doesn't work very well. As he puts on the mask, the lights and shit begin falling for some reason as Mike and Abby carry Vanessa out. And here is when we need to stop and talk about the stab wound being inconsistent. When Vanessa is being lifted, the wound is very clearly in her left abdomen, while the close-up of the knife earlier very clearly showed her getting stabbed in the top right side of her pelvis. My guess is that masking the knife atop the black of her pants was probably easier to do than masking it over her brighter shirt, and they also didn't have to worry about adding any blood effects coming through her shirt because the pants are so dark that you wouldn't notice. As Vanessa is carried away, Freddy lets out a battle cry as Foxy and the others drag William Afton's still alive and flinching body deeper into the restaurant. It's a shot reminiscent to the graphic novel of Silver Eyes, where after being spring-locked, William Afton is dragged off in the same manner. It's not at all explained why the restaurant is crumbling around them, but they quickly make their way out the door as it does, before the screen cuts to black. We then cut to a few weeks after the showdown with Afton. Abby is now interacting with children normally, which her doctor finds to be a miracle. While driving his sister home from school, we get a scene that demonstrates she's no longer standoffish or hostile towards Mike, before they make a stop at the hospital. Vanessa is shown to still be alive but on a ventilator and possibly in a coma. Mike talks to her about how he's having trouble processing what happened, but she was there to help him when they needed her most, so he's just gonna ignore the fact she helped kill a bunch of people, and he hopes she gets better. Later at home, Abby worries about her ghost friends, asking if the two of them can go visit sometimes. After hesitating, Mike says, "You never know what could happen," which is how parents say no to their kids without actually saying no. We then cut from them eating to the destroyed interior of Freddy's, where the leader of the ghost kids stares at William Afton as he writhes in pain on the floor. And as he reaches out, the kid closes the door and the credits roll. End of movie. Now I let that whole wrap up play out without interrupting, but I have an insane amount of questions that I fear shall never be answered. It's been weeks and William Afton is still alive. We're never told how much time has passed since the big showdown, but it's been at least 2 weeks. You'd think he'd die from blood loss by that point. Why can't they go see the animatronics? I thought they were only killing people because of Afton's control over them. Doesn't that mean they could just go build forts forever with the innocent baby angel spirit kids? And honestly, the biggest plot hole, what the fuck happened to Aunt Jane's body after she was killed in Mike's house? She was in a very nasty custody dispute with Mike and had a lawyer retained planning to take the matter to court. It's pretty suspicious that during this dispute, she ends up dead in the home of the person she was fighting against. On top of that, a female police officer ended up being stabbed and is on life support. How do you explain to the hospital that she was stabbed with a kitchen knife by her murdered dad, who was a career counselor who also went missing during all of this? Basically, there's so many bodies laying on the floor right now and no one's asked a single question. None of these questions are very important though, because we are talking about the horror genre after all. Status quo is God, and if things don't return to some sense of normal by the end of a movie, then sequels can't continue the story, because the reality of what they just experienced would not possibly allow them to exist normally afterwards. They've basically just had their own personal nom, so a necessary reset needs to take place so they don't end up on the streets mumbling about animatronics hiding in the trees. William Afton still being alive is also something that's up in the air, because in the games it's speculated he died instantly when he got spring trapped, but also instantly became undead and felt all the pain and suffering of the springlock suit for how many ever decades he was stuck in it. We also have an entire second movie coming out in December that could answer a lot of these questions. Maybe it'll explain that Vanessa uses her job as a police officer to successfully hide Jane's body in a similar way to how William Afton might have required her to. Now that we've made it through, we can stop analyzing the filming of the movie, which is fun in its own way, and instead focus on the themes the movie is trying to get across through our characters and their actions. Mike can thematically represent guilt and trauma, as the guilt he feels over his brother's kidnapping drives him to self-destructive behavior, which is the driving force throughout the movie. His inability to hold a job due to his obsessive behavior surrounding his traumatic past leads him to Freddy's, which itself embodies the inability to let go and or deal with past trauma. He feels like if only he could understand what happened that day, he'd somehow be redeemed of his failings. But while eventually he does discover and confront the man who kidnapped his brother, he's unable to do anything to stop William Afton, just like he was unable to as a child. Abby thematically represents innocence, creativity, and a hope for the future. She acts as a foil to her brother, who hides his feelings from others through his silent exhaustion, while Abby expresses her feelings through the medium of drawings. While Mike has been living his entire life with guilt over Garrett's kidnapping, Abby lives with the absence of knowing what truly happened and doesn't let that family trauma control or consume her. When she's met with the supernatural nature of the animatronic spirits, she's immediately accepting of them, seeing the spirits for what they really are, innocent children like herself, while Mike's first reaction is to deny the possibility of spirits and believing them to be inherently dangerous. Like Mike, Vanessa also embodies guilt, but in a much more complex way. Hers has less to do with her own actions throughout the movie and more to do with the concept known as sins of the father. Vanessa's trauma comes from living with the knowledge that her father is the monster behind all of this. But unlike Mike, who copes by holding on to the memory of his trauma to the point of obsession, Vanessa instead tries to hold on to the memory of her innocence through her nostalgia over the restaurant. And while she hasn't done any of the killing, she's inherited the burden of her father's crimes because she's chosen to willingly turn a blind eye to them. William Afton very obviously represents evil, but more specifically, he represents corruption of innocence and the cyclical nature of trauma. Because of him, both Vanessa and Mike lost their innocence at a very young age. Mike through his brother's kidnapping and death, and Vanessa through the inherited guilt of knowing about her father's crimes while doing nothing about it. Afton's evil isn't simply in killing, but also in the trauma created around his survivors, who then go on to perpetuate the cycle once more. Mike allows his obsession over Garrett's kidnapping to consume him to a point of nearly losing his sister Abby at the hands of the same man. And Vanessa's silence over her father's previous murders leads to the deaths of at least 6 other people. All of this brings us to the theme of breaking this cycle of trauma with the help of Abby. Her innocence and compassion are what help Mike, Vanessa, and the animatronics break the cycles they're all facing. Mike realizes that chasing the memory of his brother's death isn't going to fix anything. It won't bring back his mom, his dad, or his brother, but what it will do is cause him to lose the last family member he has left. Redemption for his past failings as a sibling doesn't come from understanding the past, but by protecting the present, and by doing so, he's able to break the cycle of trauma. Vanessa harbors the guilt of holding on to her father's secrets, and this actually does cause the cycle of trauma to continue further, as more and more people are killed. But seeing Mike mirror her trauma and guilt, as well as Abby mirroring the innocence she once had, Vanessa is finally able to let go of her father's secret, confess his crimes to Mike, and help save Abby, preventing the cycle of death and trauma from repeating once more. Lastly, the restaurant itself is a physical representation of the corruption of innocence, and the inability to move past trauma. A place of family-friendly fun now left decaying over decades, just like the bodies of the children killed there. The truth about their deaths has been suppressed by the man who hurt them, and he now corrupts their actions to the point of repeating the trauma of their murders on others. Once Abby helps them acknowledge what happened to them, they're finally able to face their killer head on, and the collapse of the restaurant is a symbolic collapse of the cycle, leaving the possibility that the children can move forward. Though since Afton himself isn't killed, it appears that unfortunately, the cycle will always come back. I really enjoyed this movie. It's a super well done PG-13 adaptation of a great horror franchise, and I'm super excited to do a video on the second movie when it comes out in December. From the trailer, the new location is claimed to be the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, while the first movie's was a franchise location. We've seen that Afton's gonna return, though my guess is he'll be more of a PTSD hallucination to Vanessa, and we also got hints that we're finally gonna see the puppet on screen. And fucking Balloon Boy is here, god damn.